started.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Today, inshallah, it's our second week on the Quran, 25th word. Last week, we talked about the eloquence of the Quran, and we gave one example about the silencing and argument, the Quran's silencing and argument. Inshallah, today we will talk about Quran's youth, and we will give one example to that, inshallah. I will first read, inshallah, then can talk about it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Second radiance. This is the Quran's youth. It preserves its freshness and youth every age as though newly revealed. In fact, the Quran has to have perpetual youth, since as a pre-eternal address, it addresses at once all the levels of mankind in every age. And that is how it has been seen and is seen. Even although all the centuries are different with regard to ideas and capacity, it as though looks to each particularly and teaches it. Man's works and laws grow old like man. They change and are changed. But the rulings and the laws of the Quran are so firm and well-founded that they increase in strength as the centuries pass. Indeed, this present age and the people of the book, this age, who have more than any other relied on themselves and stopped up their ears to the words of the Quran, are so in need of its guiding address of, O people of the book, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, O people of the book, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, that it is as if it addresses this age directly, and the phrase, O people of the book, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, comprises also the meaning of, O people of the modern science books. It delivers its shout of, O people of the book, come to common terms as between us and you, to the ends of the world, with all its strength, all its freshness, all its youth. For example, modern civilization, which is a product of the thought of all mankind and perhaps the jinn as well, has taken up a position opposed to the Quran, which individuals and communities have failed to dispute. With its sorcery, it impugns, it challenges the Quran's miraculousness. Now, in order to prove the claim of the verse, say, if the whole of mankind and jinns were together, قُلْ لَئِنِ اجْتَمَعَتِ الْإِنسُ وَالْجِنُّ, we shall compare the foundations and the principles which civilization has laid in the form of dispute with the principles of the Quran. At the first degree, the comparisons and balances which form all the words from the first to the 25th, and the verses that in their beginnings, which form their truths, all prove with the certainty that 2 + 2 = 4, the Quran's miraculousness and supremacy in the face of civilization. At the second degree, like the proofs in the 12th word, it is to summarize a number of principles. By reason of its philosophy, present-day civilization accepts force as the point of support in the life of society. It takes its aim, benefits, and considers the principles of its life to be conflict. It considers the bond between communities to be racialism and negative nationalism, while its aim is to provide amusements for gratifying the appetites of the soul and increasing man's needs. However, the mark of force is aggression. And since the benefits are insufficient to meet all needs, their mark is that everyone tussles and jostles over them. And the mark of conflict is contention. And the mark of racialism, aggression, since it thrives on devouring others. Thus, it is because of these principles of civilization that, despite all its virtues, it has provided a sort of superficial happiness for only 20% of mankind and cast 80% into distress and poverty. The wisdom of the Quran, however, takes as its point of support truth instead of force, and in place of benefits, has virtue and God's pleasure as its aims. It considers the principle of mutual assistance to be foundational, to be foundation in life rather than conflict. In the ties between communities, it accepts the bounds of religion, class, and country in place of racialism and nationalism. Its aims are to place a barrier before the illicit assaults of the soul's base appetites and to urge the spirit to sublime matters, to satisfy man's elevated emotions and encourage him towards the human perfections. And as for the truth, its mark is concord. The mark of virtue is mutual support, and the mark of mutual assistance, hastening to help one another. The mark of religion is brotherhood and attraction, and the result of reining in and tethering the evil commanding soul and leaving the spirit free and urging it towards perfection is happiness in this world and the next. Thus, despite the virtues present-day civilization has acquired, from the guidance of the Quran in particular, and from the preceding revealed religions, in point of fact, it has thus suffered defeat before the Quran, the Quran's youth. Inshallah, we can start, inshallah, commenting on the first paragraph here, the introduction. We will give, inshallah, many examples, like in the following weeks too, on the Quran's youth. I will read the first paragraph again, inshallah, from the second radiance. This is the Quran's youth. It preserves its freshness and youth every age as though newly revealed. In fact, the Quran has to have perpetual youth since as a pre-eternal address. It addresses at once all the levels of mankind in every age. All the centuries are different with regard to ideas and capacity. It as though looks to each particularly and teaches it. Man's works and laws grow old like man. They change and are changed. But the rulings and the laws of the Quran are so firm and well-founded that they increase in strength as the centuries pass. From these sentences, inshallah, we can start. Colin Hocam, any comments? Starting, inshallah.
I'm not sure who else is speaking today, but maybe you can start with.
Inshallah, we can start with Fatih Abi.
Assalamu alaikum. Actually, last week we discussed this kind of in detail. I mean, Quran is, as mentioned here, a pre-eternal revelation. And in the early times of Islam, there was a discussion about that, if Quran is makhluk, created or not. And the scholars acknowledged is that it's not makhluk. I mean, so it doesn't have a certain like start. It was, we know when it started, when it was revealed, it's something different than being like created. So we know it when it was revealed, but it comes from the pre-eternal and absolute knowledge of all-knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in order something to get old, it has to have a start, and then, like, for example, somebody is born and then like they start aging. So Quran doesn't have a starting point. So it really makes sense when you look at like that. Of course, it shouldn't age. And the coming examples are going to be proofs of that, how it doesn't age with all the knowledge that was quote unquote packed in Quran, and then with that like knowledge, like scholars and the lay people, they got lessons from Quran, and it's been like that for the last 1400 and some years. So it never gets old, and it will never get old.
Mashallah, anything created, as you said, gets old, right, and dies eventually. Even angels, for example, right? But the word of Allah, since it's pre-eternal, it never gets old. Any comments on the people of the book? You know.
Well, one thing I want to mention is, like in the original, it says Ya Ahl al-Kitab, meaning comprises Ya Ahl al-Maktab, like people of modern sciences. It's like the literal meaning of Ya Ahl al-Maktab is those who are educated in modern secular schools. One of the translations I have that has that footnote on it. Ya Ahl al-Maktab, those educated in modern secular schools, as opposed to Ya Ahl al-Kitab. Like people of modern science books.
Yeah.
I mean, the real translation, the literal translation is people of modern schools, maybe. And like, this is not a like wrong meaning, but like in modern schools, we study modern sciences. So, and one thing that I want to add to that part is the sorcery. With its sorcery, it impugns the Quran's miraculousness. I think this alludes to the story of Moses, which was in Quran, which is related in Quran. So, like the Pharaoh had sorcerers, so they got into a debate with Moses, and then like his staff killed all their like sorcering tools. So like the modern sciences with the technology it offers to us, it's like kind of like sorcery. I mean, especially when we look from the like some Islamic countries. I mean, some people might see the West or the West as like they are technologically advanced, and they must be onto something. They must be doing something like good. I mean, it must be further analyzed, but this feeling, it comes from the modern technology, which is kind of like the sorcerers against Moses. I don't know if I could make the point clear.
Yeah, and they challenge the Quran with science, actually, kind of, right? That's what you mean?
Yeah. With that,
Science,
I mean,
against Quran.
Yeah. If with that, like, if you had the truth, then you would have these tools, kind of. Yeah.
MashaAllah, we have Asai Musa, right? The staff of Moses, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, and not only it shows us, like it's like it has actually two meanings. The staff of Moses, like there's another miracle of Moses, like he hit hit the rocks with his staff, and then like water came forth. And like one miracle is that like staff of Moses shows us truth of faith from everything. And then the other is like it kills all those sorceries.
And how can we understand that? The second example that kills all their
sorceries.
magics?
Yeah, all their magics. Yeah, magics. Yeah.
Like when we say like
just one example that comes to my mind is like, I think it was in 21st Word, when talking about like, there's a question there, why is not Quran explicitly mentioning and talking about airplanes? And then he's saying that like when you compare airplanes to bees and flies, they are like so backwards in terms of technology. So they don't like, they don't have that much importance. I mean, there are some verses that alludes to traveling on the air, but like it doesn't have to mention airplanes because technologically it's so backwards that when you compare it to the flies or bees or even birds.
MashaAllah, yeah. When you put fly in one side and all the airplanes in the world, and the fly would beat all of them, right? Just like the,
Yeah.
I heard that, I read in one of the tafsirs, one of the interpretation of the Quran, that Musa alayhi salam was alone by himself with his staff, but the magicians, there were like maybe 1,000 magicians, like all of them, like they are a huge crowd in front of Musa alayhi salam with only one staff, right? And when you, mashallah, the example you gave is just like that, a small fly compared with all the airplanes in the world, right? The small fly would definitely beat all of them in terms of art. Yeah, I'm sure Colin Hocam can comment on this.
Bismillah. Going back to the notion of the Quran being uncreated, I think we have to say that divine speech is uncreated because divine speech is an attribute of Allah, and all of the attributes and names, of course, are uncreated. And divine speech is uncreated, but it manifests in forms which are, in a sense, constricted by the limitation of words and letters and sounds. The letters of the Quran, the sounds and the words are all limited, but they are manifesting an unlimited attribute, which is the unlimited attribute of speech. And this is the miraculousness of the Quran, that this can happen, that there can be an uncreated attribute which is manifest in limited forms, and those limited forms are endless. And by that I mean the meanings of the Quran are endless, and the meanings change with the times, because God's words are pre-eternal and post-eternal. They are timeless, and yet we are, in a sense, trapped within the confines of time and space. And so our everything is time sensitive for us. We are born and we die at a certain juncture of human history, and the words of Allah will, by virtue of the fact that they are timeless, they will be relevant to us in that period. Those words are timeless, and so whichever period you happen to live in, those words will make sense. Also, whichever geographical situation you happen to be in, it will make sense. And just one very small example, we know that there is a verse in Quran where it tells us to look at the camel and to see how it's created. And the word for camel is ibil. Now, for a 7th century Bedouin, ibil would have been instantly recognizable as a camel. But for me, for example, in 20th century Britain, 21st century Britain, it's quite possible that I would never see a camel in my life. And therefore one may ask, well, how can that be relevant to me? Now, of course, I can see a camel on TV, I can read about camels, but the word ibil can also mean cloud. And therefore, if you have never seen a camel, you will have seen a cloud. Everyone sees clouds. There is no one in the whole of the world, the whole of the planet Earth, that has not seen a cloud. So this shows one, spark of the light of the miraculousness of the Quran, that it admits to meanings which are time sensitive and which change according to the particular period that we're in, our particular situation, our particular geographical situation. And this is its miraculousness. That with a number of limited words, how many words are in the Quran and how many different words are in the Quran? How many different sounds? These are all limited, and yet they are communicating to us eternal truths, uncreated truths. And I think that is one of the real standout points of the Quran's miraculousness and the timelessness and the youth of the Quran. The Quran is forever young.
Inshallah. The words, you said the words are limited, but the meanings, can we say that the meaning is kind of like since it comes from the attributes of Allah, it's unlimited, can we say?
The meanings are unlimited, and you will understand something. Everyone will bring to the Quran a certain understanding, and you will derive from the Quran meanings in accordance with your understanding. And the Quran is addressing every single one of us directly. So it's being revealed constantly under ever differing situations and ever differing circumstances. So, in 7th century Arabia, in 21st century Europe, the Quran is being revealed constantly and consistently. And it is being shown to us, just as the verses in creation. When we think of ayat of the Quran, we should think of ayat of the creation as well. The signs in creation are also being renewed, continuously created and recreated. And in that sense, there is no difference between Kitab al-Quran and Kitab al-Kainat, because Kitab al-Kainat is also uncreated in one sense. While the Kainat are created, the meanings that they embody are uncreated. If you look at the cherry tree, which is the example I always use, the cherry tree is in a sense created and uncreated. It is created because it has a trunk, it has branches, it has leaves, blossoms, but it is uncreated because these created phenomena are expressing uncreated names and attributes and uncreated truths. So I see no difference between Quran and Kitab al-Kainat from the point of view of createdness or uncreatedness, in actual fact.
Inshallah. Allah sends new flowers, new cherry trees, new cherries, right? Every year. So Allah reveals new meanings, inspires new meanings of the Quran, right? Every century.
Absolutely.
That had not been discovered in the past centuries.
Through limited means, the cherry tree is itself, because its createdness, it is limited. And yet, from that limited phenomenon, we can understand unlimited and eternal truths.
And here the sentence, but the rulings and the laws of the Quran are so firm and well-founded that they increase in strength as the centuries pass. Not getting old, but increase and getting maybe younger.
Yeah, because what we have is it is cumulative. The wisdom that is gained from the Quran is cumulative. So this knowledge and wisdom that is stored up in the works of the scholars over 1,400 years, it adds to the validity of the Quran, because the proofs of its veracity are given all the time. through scholarship, through learned study and reflection on the Quran, the truths that emerge from it, and the facts and the knowledge and the understandings are, cumulatively they add up, and you have this vast wealth of knowledge which is getting stronger and stronger and stronger as time passes. And so if the whole of mankind and the jinns were to gather together, they could not even create not just a single fly or the eye of a fly, but a single letter of the Quran. In other words, no one can match the miraculousness of the Quran. No one can do what the Quran is doing. With a work of literature, it's impossible to do what the Quran does. And this is why, as he goes on to show, the Quran is the foundation of a glittering civilization, a faith civilization, whereas modernity is basically a dead civilization for all intents and purposes, because it's built on a lie. So as he goes on to show, it's built on this dependency that we have on human reason without the benefit of revelation. Actually, it's a mix. Modern civilization is a mix of ideas and concepts and theories which are based to a certain extent on revelation, but mostly on the use of human reason without the benefit of revelation.
And since it's limited, it has provided a sort of superficial happiness for only 20%.
Yeah, it provides material prosperity and so-called happiness for a small minority of people. I mean, we know that I think 1% of the world's population owns 99% of the world's wealth. So of course it's disproportionate. So whether you say that people are materially prosperous, yes, you can say that, but materially happy, that's another issue. That's it's dubious, it's doubtful.
I just want to add something. I mean, Quran talks to each and every human being, and if we go a little bit deeper, like every human being is not like, we cannot consider it just like one type of person or just one person. For example, like I am not the same person that I was like 10 years ago. And maybe we should remember when Ustad is talking about جددوا إيمانكم بلا إله إلا الله, renew your faith with La ilaha illallah, as often as a hadith. So like one reasoning he gives is you're not the same person as you were yesterday, and you are not even the same person as you were 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, because like I think differently when I'm angry. I think differently when I am happy. I think in a certain way when I have money, and I think in another way when I don't have money. So every one of us like have those ups and downs all the time. So Quran, with its miraculousness, has lessons with for all of those situations that we go in, and with all of those feelings that we are in, and it gives us lessons, and it helps us psychologically. It helps us understand why Allah gave us those bounties or those calamities. So like if there are like 7 billion people in the world, like we can multiply that by maybe hundreds or thousands, because each of those 7 billion people have like several different personalities through the things that they are going through. And Quran has answers and lessons for each and every one of those.
Mashallah, I never thought that deeply. You know, as you said, every day we are a different person, but even not every day, like every 10 minutes, right? 15 minutes, we change. When we are hungry, we are someone different. When we are full, when we are rich, when we are poor, ups and downs. But the Quran presents answers for all our characteristics to 7 billion people, and each of them has 100 different characteristics in their daily lives. Quran's youth, mashallah. Also, I wanted to talk about, again, I think we can talk a little bit more about the people of the book. Colin Hocam, any comments on the people of the book? You know, we see that a lot in the Quran about Christians and Jews, Bible and Torah, but now we have modern science books.
Yeah, I mean, it can mean literally the people of the book, but it can also mean those people who have embraced God's words, and God's words as they are manifest in physical books, as you say, books of science, books of literature, books of learning, books of knowledge. It can mean the scripture, the revealed scriptures, and it can mean the book of creation. You know, those who are experts or who are learning how to read and interpret the book of creation. Because once you understand from the Quran, you can use the Quran as a guide to the creation. The creation, you know, starts to become very light and full of meaning. It is already full of meaning, but when you apply revelation to it, then the book of creation becomes very, very light. It becomes light-filled, and its meanings become obvious. And then the book that is the Quran and the other books in creation, they all complement each other. You know, they all interpret each other and complement each other. So if you look at the Quran, if you study it, you will not find any contradiction therein. And similarly, if you look at the verses in creation, the signs in creation, you won't find any contradictions therein. You will find harmony and balance and equilibrium. You will find beauty. You will find synergy between different phenomena, just as there is in the Quran synergy between different verses. You'll find equilibrium. You will find a great harmony of letters and words in the Quran, just as you find a harmony of different realms and worlds in the creation. You will find eloquence in the Quran, and you will find eloquence in the created words of God that we see in the creation. So, you know, these are really, it's really intertextuality, to use a very fashionable word in literary criticism. You know, we're talking about intertextuality, really. All of these different texts are all describing the same truths, and they all intersect with each other like concentric and intersecting circles. So yes, people of the book, people of the divine speech, people who have embraced and who engage with God's words, you know, who are addressed by God and who also address God.
So it's a good explanation. You know, God sent Bible, Torah as a guidance. And also when we talk about science books, Allah also sent that as a guidance, right, to guide us. And so the verse here, all people of the book, whatever book you are reading that is revealed by God, you know, Bible, Torah, or the science books, all people of the book, come to common terms as between us and you. Quran delivers its shout of all people of the book come to common terms as between you and between us and you. Shouts this to the ends of the world with all its strength, all its freshness, all its youth. Is there any comment on the sorcery part, the magic?
I think we said that the sorcerers of the time of Moses, their parallel today are those who believe in the sovereignty and the superiority of science. And they believe in something called scientism, which is their understanding that science can answer all of the questions, even the questions which don't belong in the domain of science. They are very vehemently opposed to revelation and religion, and they say that science can answer all of humankind's questions. And everything is attributed to science, even those things which are not at all scientific, even those so-called sciences which are not at all scientific. Things like astrophysics, which is completely non-scientific, mostly anyway non-scientific, or things such as anything that's rooted in the past, and which is not open to scientific experimentation. But the scientists, science itself has a kind of Pavlovian response when the word is used. As soon as you say science or scientist, then everyone bows down in veneration and awe, because science is really, it is a fetish. It's been fetishized, and it's an icon, really. As soon as you say scientists say or science says, and this is used all the time, it's used to justify policies, political policies. It's used to justify economic policy. It's used to justify technological meddling with creation or technological advancement, which may be not, that beneficial to humankind, depending on, of course, what it is. The word science and the word scientists, these are invoked in order to make people think that, well, if it's science or if scientists say, then it must be okay. When 9 times out of 10, what is being described or what is being invoked is neither science nor scientific. So it's used as a kind of mesmerizing word, a word that mesmerizes, a word that hypnotizes. As soon as you say it, people say, scientists say, so it must be right. As scientists said X, Y, Z, then it must be right. And of course, a lot of times it's not. So we have to be very careful. And those unbelieving scientists, those who push theories such as the theory of evolution, and various other theories, maybe even things like, laws of relativity, and things like geocentrism, heliocentrism rather, things which are not testable, then they can't be scientific. And those who push them use science as though it were a magical spell. And so those scientists, the unbelieving scientists today, are the direct parallels of the sorcerers at the time of Moses. So, one day, hopefully, inshallah, just as the sorcerers of Moses finally became believers, we must hope, and I think it will happen, that the vast majority of scientists, true scientists, will come to a position of faith. And, the staff of Moses, the Asai Musa, will swallow up all of the serpents of these, scientistic magicians, not scientific, scientistic, from scientism. Inshallah, that will happen.
Inshallah. Mashallah, that was a good parallel from some scientism. When you say something, when you say something like science, it's scientific. As you said, everyone believes in it. Just like, for Muslims, when we say, oh, it's in the Quran, then you say, oh, then you accept it, right? It's from Allah. And when you say, oh, it's scientific, then everyone accepts it.
Yeah, I mean, there is an observation in the chat from Mehmet Su. Science answers the how questions, religion answers the why questions. The problem is science also purports to answer the why questions, and that's when it becomes scientism. And also we have to be very careful. Even when science answers the how questions, it answers it in a very secularized way. It answers it in a way that is agenda driven. We have to beware and be very careful of the language used by scientists, you know, because we say that, okay, there is no contradiction between science and faith, but there is. There are lots of contradictory points. There are lots of points of divergence. We have to be very careful when we say this, because there are lots of things that we believe that scientists don't believe, and they can't believe. We believe in baraka, for example. Baraka cannot be a scientific tenet because scientists don't believe in baraka. So how can we say that science and religion don't conflict? We believe in qadar, you know. We don't believe in randomness, but scientists believe in randomness. So we can't just say that science and religion have no contradiction. If science is done properly, if science is done correctly, and if science is not used as magic, then yes, there is no contradiction with faith. But science as it's done today in the secular West, we have to be very, very careful to make a distinction between proper science and science that's ideologized and that carries with it ideological words, you know, ideological phrases. We have to be very careful.
Unfortunately, you know, one thing also to comment on what you said, Kolna, at the time of Musa and the magicians, and when they demonstrated their magics, they actually hypnotized people, right? It's not real, you know, what they demonstrated is not real. They hypnotized people. It's also even in the Quran mentioned that everyone was hypnotized. Now the science people, the scientists, did you say scientists or science? You use the term for them. Those scientists, like they hypnotize people with, you know, these magical words, some terms.
I think secular scientists, you know, those who don't have faith, they are the ones who use these loaded terms, and yes, they mesmerize people with science, with the word science. There are, you know, Pavlov was a Russian experimenter, and I think you probably know the story. He experimented with dogs. He was looking at dogs and how dogs respond to certain commands. And he taught dogs that whenever they got a certain cue word, the dogs would start to drool. Water would come from their mouths because they knew that they were going to be rewarded soon. So this is called a Pavlovian reaction. You know, when you say something and suddenly someone, you know, starts to, metaphorically, their mouth starts to water. You know, if I start mentioning kebab, you know, Adana kebab, for example, or Iskander, you know, if I start mentioning these really tasty foods, people, you know, start to feel hungry or their mouths start to water. Today, this is how they control people, is they mesmerize people, they hypnotize people with the word science. Because science, if you say that science says, then you close down the conversation straight away. Oh, it must be right then if a scientist says, or NASA says, for example. You know, NASA says this, NASA says that. You know, we have to be very, very careful because we're being hypnotized all the time. Advertising is a kind of hypnosis. And this is a kind of secular advertising, you know, advertising the prominence and the sovereignty of science over religion, over faith.
Mashallah. Also, to add to this, you know, Ustad talks about the names, right? They give certain names and they use many terminological, like different words to explain something. And when they talk like that, like scientifically, like so-called scientifically, like with their magical words to something, right? People are hypnotized. as opposed to, you know, the words of the Quran. They use like this their own made-up words, terminological words, some maybe scientific words that they made up.
Yes,
People are,
yes, definitely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, scientists will use Latin words,
yeah,
and you know, they will say, "Oh, X is suffering from." I'll give an example: pseudo hypercortisolism, right? Which is something I had once. X is suffering from pseudo hypercortisolism. It means that they have this hormone in their body, and they think that the hormone is increasing when it's not increasing. That's all it is. But if you say that long Latin, that long word, that long technical word, then people will say, "Oh, he's a scientist. He must know." And this is why they bamboozle us. You know, they mesmerize us with science, and with long words, and it gives this Pavlovian reaction in people. So, oh, he knows what he's on about because he's a scientist.
mm.
There's a in the chat there is a comment. It says, yes, science and faith have contradictions in some ways, but that doesn't mean we consider both science and faith to be two different things that don't have anything in common. I think that science is actually about cause and effect. Science, actually, we can reduce it to proving the cause and effect, the scientific method. Science also can mean knowledge, you know, so the body of knowledge that we have, scientia is, in Latin, it means knowledge, basically. So science just means knowledge. And I would have to understand what the person who in the chat means by science before I can say that it's different to faith. You know, faith and science don't have to conflict, but they're not the same thing. You know, all they have in common is that they are ways of reading the creation, and as such, they are not contradictory. You know, they can be in harmony. You can read the creation in a certain way as a person of faith, and you can also do experiments, and you can apply the scientific method. So there's no need for them to conflict. It's when science starts to make pronouncements that don't belong in the mouth of a scientist. That's when it becomes difficult. And it's when people of faith start to say things like, oh, you know, I can prove scientifically that jinn exist, and, you know, crazy things like this. So there is this idea of, you know, non-overlapping magisteria. Magisteria means a realm of study or a realm of action, a realm of intellectual action. And you can say that these shouldn't really overlap. So scientists are doing one thing, people of faith are doing another, and you shouldn't interfere in each other's domain. I don't think that is, strictly speaking, true. But, you know, faith is not science, and science actually is a kind of faith for many. But science, pure science, and pure faith are different things, but they're not in discord with each other necessarily.
Jazakallah. Fatih, any comments on this?
Yeah, just in parallel to what Colin Hocam said, like scientists or people who believe in science accuse religion of being product of dogma, but the people who trust science too much have a lot of like beliefs which would be considered dogma too. So
MashaAllah, Brother Fatih has hit the nail on the head. You know, scientists can be ultra dogmatic. They have no locus, they have no place to accuse people of faith, A, of dogmatism, and B, of superstition. Because science talks about things that no one has ever seen, no one is likely to see. They talk as though these things, you know, are proven beyond any kind of doubt, and mostly they're not. They say things are scientific that actually aren't, because you can only say something is scientific if it has been subjected to the scientific method. If it hasn't, then it's not science. You know, like for example, there's a new iPhone. If there is a new iPhone, people will say, "Isn't science wonderful?" No, science has nothing to do with producing an iPhone. That's technology. Science may be involved in working out certain rules when, you know, people are drawing up plans to make an iPhone, but iPhone is technology. It's technology, and technology is not the same as science. So this is how we use science, as this catch-all word, and we use it in as though it's magic, really. So we are, in a sense, a little bit like the sorcerers at the time of Musa, alayhi salam. We use science in that way. People use science. Our teachers use science in that way. This is what makes the story of Musa and Pharaoh so amazing and so topical and so important and foundational.
And it's everywhere, like in many parts of the Quran, right? Interestingly, Allah, the most talked prophet, you know, the most mentioned prophet is Musa alayhi salam.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we've country. Also, yani, interesting. I've been focusing on the Risale, the treatise on the nature, and it talks about them as, you know, their ideas as superstition. You know, that word is used a lot. You know, the things that they accuse us, actually Ustad uses it against them. You know,
yeah, mashallah, he does. Yeah, that's how I understood it as well.
And he says, like, you know, I can read one. It occurs to one, therefore, how is it that those famous and supposedly brilliant philosophers accepted such a blatantly obvious superstition and continue that way?
Mashallah, you know, rahmatullah alayh, you know, on Ustad for these words, you know, which inspire us and are so true. Yes, there's nothing more I can say about that.
This part Moses. Alhamdulillah, as you said, this gives us strong. I mean, before I got to know Risale Nur, you know, the atheists, like, they talked so bold, right? So courageous. And you actually need someone against them, and we didn't have proof. But now when I started reading Risale Nur, alhamdulillah, you know, we have the staff of Moses.
Yes.
That can all of them.
The Risale itself altogether is Asay Musa, which will gobble up all of these untruths and eat them.
Alhamdulillah.
We are very fortunate. We are very blessed, you know.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah allow us to, inshallah, spend more time and benefit from it, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
So on this Quran's youth, inshallah, we will continue to talk about it, and we will give examples, inshallah, in the following weeks. This was like an introduction to it, inshallah. We can continue next week comparing the modern present-day civilization and the wisdom of the Quran, inshallah. Colonel, we can finish, inshallah, with a dua.
I've spoken too much, brother. You know, Brother Fatih should grace us with the dua, inshallah.
O Allah, illuminate our hearts with the light of belief and the Quran and minds. Ameen.
Amen.
Thank you everyone for joining, inshallah. I hope to see you next week, inshallah, continuing from this topic, Quran's youth, with different examples. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for your moderating, Umar Farooq.
Allah, thank you for